Issue 128. After Eggman makes himself the most powerful person in the universe, and a giant, he shoots Sonic with a mere laser from his eye, with green steam around him. Sonic lampshades how that was supposed to be the best he could do, shooting a generic laser at him. Why not just snap his fingers and kill him and all of the heroes? Then Sonic realizes he was teleported to an alternate timeline, where Eggman's back in power, ruling Mobius with robots. I've heard of this story before I read the comic. After he destroys the robot troopers and calls Johnny out on not fighting them, Johnny and Amy don't recognize him, and after Johnny dismisses him as a nut for recognizing them and knowing their names, how would he be a nut for that? Amy says she'll play along condescendingly and tells Sonic that this robot factory hell is Emerald Hill Zone, which has become a toxic waste dump. Johnny tells Amy that it's not safe to be out on the streets this time of night. If they're cowards, instead of fighting Eggman, well, first off, how'd they meet and become friends if Sonic was never born? And second, why were they out here to begin with? Then they see Porker, who's called Oscar, and he's dressed in black, leading a death squad of robots. Good to see the concept of an evil Porker being used, but I hope it's got a good explanation, like him being brainwashed into it. Oscar says his database shows no record of Sonic, when everyone else is recorded in the Citizen database. He tells the Badniks to take Sonic in for interrogation, and Sonic destroys them. He's naturally scared of Sonic, who sees Eggman magically appear to him and taunt Sonic about Porker really not knowing who he is. Eggman explains that without Sonic being born, Porker never had a hero to look up to and give him courage, causing him to be his most devoted and terrified slave. Porker never had courage to begin with, that's why he ditched the freedom fighters out of fear, remember? I mean, he had a little since he went on a few missions. Anyways, Eggman then taunts Sonic about the fact that Tails drowned in the swamp without Sonic being born to save him. I have to remind you that when he was in that swamp, he wasn't in very deep because his tails were sticking out of it. So why couldn't he have just stood up and gotten out himself? Sonic falls to his knees with his eyes closed from hearing about Tails' fate, and the story ends. I'm sure this will all be reversed, so who cares? I'm just interested in seeing the alternate timeline what-if scenario. Like, this is certainly the most epic that Eggman's ever been. The next story has a text box saying that this is an untold adventure of the early days of Tails, and another text box says that this is taking place years ago in the Nameless Zone. We see some Fox Mobians hiding in the trees, one of whom calls Tails a freak and the other of whom plans to bully him. Okay, so if Tails really was bullied for having two tails here, as logic would dictate, then why the fuck is he such a cheerful child smiling while walking around all carefree all the time, instead of being nervous and serious all the time? And why was he so casual about telling Sonic that he had two tails and demonstrating that he can fly with them? Surprisingly, the bullies don't try to beat Tails up, and merely make fun of him, and generously let him leave. These are the nicest bullies ever. Witless, the main bully, well, maybe he's a bully because of that horrible name. God, his parents must have hated him. He brags about his strength, and two warriors from a rival group are lurking around and think that he sounds ideal to fight in the arena of doom as karma for boasting. Witless gets kidnapped and reveals that he was just making up his badass stories. Someone naturally lampshades Tails inexplicably wanting to rescue his worst bully, and he runs off the cliff while the person snarks, "Some hero you are," instead of going, "Holy shit!" at seeing somebody run to their death, like what actually happened. Especially since he didn't try to beat him up last time, so it's not like he wants him to get killed. That really took me out of it. Predictably, this is when Tails learns that he can fly from spinning his tails in desperation, which is really ideal. Like, this is exactly how I would imagine Tails to learn how to fly. And he scares off the kidnappers and lets the bully fall into the mud because karma. Witless says that he owes him an apology and thanks him for saving him. Well, that was oddly considerate of a bully. And Tails lampshades that this is the nicest he's ever been. The overly saccharine story ends with it being implied that Witless won't be telling any more of his stories. Are we gonna actually see him go to Emerald Hill for the first time? No? No, I guess not. So much for an origin. In the next story, we see some badniks chasing people out of their house. Techno tells Amy that she's received a distress signal from Sunshine Valley Zone, and Sharpie has also picked up the message as he's flying over a lake with a boat. It turns out some masked guy named Ultra Duck got here to beat the Badnik first, and Amy and Shortfuse selfishly complain about being upstaged for the third time this week rather than be grateful for the help, Although since the guy's telling them all to retire and make way for him, I can see why they hate him and think he doesn't deserve the praise. Besides, I immediately suspected him of working for Eggman or the Eggman fan club, since only one of those people would want the heroes to retire from fighting badniks. I mean, how could one person possibly handle all of the badniks? There could be badniks in other places where he isn't. After some of the civilians agree with him that they should retire, the heroes figure out that Ultra Duck has to know where the badniks are going to attack to get to them before they would. Techno says that the destroyed badniks are of a type that Eggman stopped making years ago. She figures out that these are old badniks reprogrammed to lose to make Ultra Duck look good. The badnik alarm goes off for some real badniks and Ultra Duck's nowhere to be found. The heroes destroy them, and Techno removes the mask of Ultra Duck, revealing him to be an engineer of Eggman's. The story ends with him just being a street sweeper. In the next story, we continue from where we left off in the first story, fortunately, with Eggman causing rain with his omnipotence, because one of the civilians wanted that not to happen. Sonic wastes time talking to some civilians who wouldn't ever believe him about who he is and the fact that he's going to save the world, and robot troopers show up, with one of them saying that talking in the streets is punishable by death. Really? That's dumb. Everyone's gonna do that! And so, like, you'll run out of workers. Sonic beats the robots, and Eggman uses his powers to create fissures in the earth to threaten Sonic and the civilians. Eggman says that he could crush Mobius in the palm of his hand, and Sonic points out that if he did that, there'd be nothing left for him to rule, so it'd be like smashing his favorite toy, as Eggman puts it. Eggman says that he'll only spare the citizens of Mobius so he can continue making them miserable, and the story ends with Sonic saying that this was his first mistake. The first story was by Nitro Kitchen, and was about Eggman using his Emerald Omnipotence rather smartly, as instead of just hitting Sonic with a laser, he transports him to a changed history where Sonic was never born, and Eggman took over the world with his omnipotence, with all of the logical consequences resulting from it, like Sonic's friends all being too cowardly to fight. Like, you're gonna see this story arc is written rather well. Like, he really thought deeply into how logically Eggman would take advantage of omnipotence, being able to change reality to his will. You see, Flynn, this is how you write having a reality rewriting machine. Or not machine in this case. Like, this is even more creative. You did expect Eggman to make a machine, but not to actually have Master Emerald power. The rest of the stories are by Lou Stringer. The second one was an overly saccharine, unrealistically happy story, where sure Tails is bullied in the Nameless Zone for having an extra tail. And I like how that makes sense, but we only see one person do it, and he just teases him instead of trying to hurt him. I don't buy that at all. And I especially don't buy that Tails would be the type to cheerfully take a walk all carefree when he's picked on so much. And that Tails would have told Sonic about Second Tail so casually if he used to be picked on for it. I mean, we've seen people try to run after people to beat them up in an angry mob in the comic before. Like when the civilians ran after Sonic. The story is pretty predictable other than that. Tails learns he can fly by running off a cliff, and saves a karmatically kidnapped bully, earning his respect. Why didn't the civilian freak out from seeing a kid fall to his death? That would be traumatizing. No matter who he is, unless that civilian was a sociopath. And the final story continues the first story, explaining that the reason Eggman doesn't use his omnipotence to just destroy Mobius and Sonic along with it is because then he wouldn't get to make them suffer anymore. That still doesn't explain why he doesn't put Sonic in a cage with his omnipotence to turn him into a robot slave. And that's why he'll fail, because he'll be ridden like an idiot to avoid winning with his omnipotence, just like Interjack and Chaos Knuckles, I assume. I liked the story, of course, and I liked how the civilians started to have faith in Sonic. Oh yeah, and there was a story where a superhero engineer of Eggman's, well, he pretends to be a superhero to make people lose faith in their heroes. But he gets proven to be a fraud. It was good. Creative.